right, hello everybody. Welcome back to Music Impossible. Professor Jim here. Hope you did well in that first exam from the first 4 weeks. We're moving on now to our next section. We're going to get into rhythm. So the next several sections are going to include a unit on rhythm, and then we have scales and triads coming up for our next couple of weeks of classes. So looking forward to diving into that with you. Now, we already started a little bit on rhythm when we looked at some of the whole notes, half notes, dotted half notes, quarter notes, a couple of test questions on it. Nothing too in-depth because I knew we had a little bit more of a bigger section coming up here. So we are going to go back and we're going to look at some of those things we've already learned, but now we're going to start learning how to count them and what does that mean. So we're going to come over to our music notation software called Sibelius. I know I've mentioned it before, but Sibelius is made by the same company that makes Pro Tools, and so I use both of those tools as a composer and in my film and television work and things like that. And so one of the cool things is that Pro Tools and Sibelius do have some ability to talk to each other, where you can import notes into Pro Tools or import Pro Tools into Sibelius, and they kind of talk to each other to make work a little bit more efficient. So what you're seeing here on the Sibelius screen is the a percussion staff. And so we learned about that 5-line staff and we use that staff 90% of the time. Almost all pitched instruments are going to use some version of a treble clef, bass clef. There's also tenor and alto clefs we'll get in down the road. And we'll use that 5-line staff more often than not. There are other staffs out there, percussion staffs, that sometimes have 1, 2, 3, 4, even 5 lines. And depending on what you're writing and what instruments you're writing for will depend on which type of staff you use. When you have pitched percussion, those pitched percussion instruments like xylophone, marimba, vibraphone, those glockenspiel, timpani are all pitched percussion instruments. They have specific pitches that they produce, and you can write traditional music for those. The other category of percussion are those non-pitched percussion instruments, things like drums and cymbals and triangles and things that don't have specific pitches, but they are there as rhythm instruments more than anything else. So what you're seeing here is a one-line percussion staff with a percussion clef on the left. And there's all kinds of different clefs we'll get into also down the road. But I wanted to demonstrate what that looks like. Okay, we're going to start off our note value lessons with quarter notes. Quarter notes are a review. You did them last time in the last 4 weeks of the class. And so this is not anything new. But if I were to put 4 quarter notes here, that the quarter note here is going to get the beat. So if I take a look at here, I have 4 quarter notes. Now, this lesson is reviewing what a quarter note is. Quarter note gets 1 beat, we know that. And then after that, how do we count these different rhythms? This one's the easiest of all. There are 4 beats in a measure. The quarter note gets the beat. That means each quarter note is going to get a number. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've now done 4 beats in that measure. We're all done. There's no room for more notes, because this top number tells us we only get 4 beats in a measure. So now we got to start a brand new one. Another review are our half notes. Our half notes are right there. And you might remember a half note gets 2 counts. And so how would I label this? Now it's going to take up the first 2 counts. It took 2 quarter notes to get 2 whole counts in the prior measure. Now with the half note, because it gets 2 beats, that one is going to get counts 1 and 2. And guess what? There's our last 2 counts there, counts 3 and 4. So now we filled up all 4 beats in the measure. And now we got to start a brand new measure or a brand new bar. And we're going to go here and we're going to talk about a different note value we talked about. And that was the whole note. And a whole note, as you might recall, gets 4 counts and 4 counts. So this one, how does this one get labeled? You put all 4 numbers underneath the whole note. 4 beats in a measure. Now, there are other time signatures that will have 3 beats in a measure or 5 beats in a measure or 6 or 12. And we have to get to that top number before we can start a brand new measure. We're only going to be working in 4/4 time for our purposes in this unit, just to make things a little bit simpler. But as we go, you'll see that how that changes for different time signatures. Now, we also learned about the dotted half note. And you might remember the dotted half note. The dotted half note gets 3 counts. Let's go ahead and put a dotted half note there. Now, how many beats does that get? Well, we said it gets 3. So that means it's going to get the first 3 counts of the measure. It's the first note. By the way, the first note of every bar must have a 1 underneath of it. It always starts with 1, nothing else. But because we only use 3 beats, we have this whole extra beat left over here. You might remember that's a quarter rest, and a quarter rest gets 1 beat, just like a quarter note. So we can fill that with something else. Now, of the notes we've learned so far, there's really only one choice we have, and that is to throw a quarter note in there, and that completes the measure. Now, what do we label that? We label that with the number 4 because it occurs on beat 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, ba. That quarter note is on count 4. So what does this sound like in context all the way across? Take a listen. So there'll be 2 different kinds of assignments you'll have. You'll have to label or count the assignments as you see here, using 1, 2, 3, 4 to label them. We'll do a couple more examples here in a second. But you'll also have exercises where I will write out the rhythm, and you're going to be required to clap that rhythm. Now, we'll be on the honor system because I'll give you the answers in a video of what those rhythms are supposed to sound like and see if you're on the right track or not. All right, let's take a look at just a few more complicated ones using these 4 different note values we've talked about. And we're going to learn how to count those. So one of your homework assignments is going to be to take a line like this and be able to label it correctly. So this one we're going to take a look at. We always start every measure with a 1, no matter what the note is. But we see this as a half note. So a half note gets 2 counts, so it's going to have to get counts 1 and 2. Then we come over here. This now has to be count 3. And this last quarter note is count 4. If we keep going, we have a brand new measure because we have that measure line there, which means this new measure always has to start with what? The number 1. There you go. Number 1 is there. Now this dotted half note is going to get 3 counts. We've already used the number 1. Can't use that again. So what's left? We have counts 2, 3, and 4. And so that accounts for the 3 counts for a dotted half note. That measure's done. We've gotten to 4. We're done. We're going to start a brand new bar here with this whole note. We're always going to start with 1 no matter what on the first note of a bar. But this one gets all 4 counts. So you're going to put all 4 numbers underneath of that whole note, 1, 2, 3, and 4. This one's a little trickier. So you have count 1 because we always start every measure with count 1. Next would be count 2, but this one is a half note. So it's going to get 2 beats, counts 2 and 3. The quarter note gets count 4. And this last one we saw in our previous example, counts 1 and 2 are there. Counts 3 and 4 are here. So when you do your assignment for this one, be very careful. Don't forget, the trick is every bar has to start with the number 1, and you must get to 4 before starting the next one. So if you're not starting with 1, there's your first error. If you don't find yourself getting to the number 4 in any particular measure, then you haven't counted something right. You have to go back and take a look. So I'll give you a number of opportunities to do this, provide the answer sheet for you, and you can check your work against that. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some terms before we finish our lesson today. Just some things we've talked about that we want to make a little bit more clear definition of. We talked about note values, and note values just simply how long or short you play a particular note. So the note value of a quarter note is 1. The note value of a whole note is 4. Next one let's take a look at is rhythm. We hear that word a lot, and it means slightly different things in different contexts. But basically, when it comes to music theory, we're talking about taking all of these note values, mixing them up, throwing them into a big giant mixing bowl, and creating a combination, overlaying all of these different note values creates a rhythm. And so we take all the note values, you mix them up, and that's where you get your rhythm. The last one we can talk about is the word beat. Oftentimes we talk about feeling the beat, And what does that mean? So a beat in music, kind of like your steady, consistent beating heart. Music, we want that to have a steady and consistent rhythm so that we can play to it, especially if we have multiple musicians. The beat is often that thing that you kind of bob your head to while you're dancing, or you got a song that comes on that you like, or you're clapping along, or whatever it happens to be. That's you feeling that steady and consistent set of note values or rhythm that you can feel. It's almost like a feel more than it is a literal thing. Now, we can use things like metronomes or click tracks and things to help us stay on beat or stay on time. But when we talk about beat, we'll also, talk about the word tempo, which is just how slow or fast a song is. That's a vocabulary word that'll come up again down the road. All right, well, that's it for today's lesson. We're going to dive into counting some more notes. You're going to have some homework to do. There's some music math in there. There's counting. There's a little bit of clapping or tapping exercises, and then we'll start getting into more complicated rhythms like eighth notes and rests, and then time signatures coming up in the next couple of lessons. All right, we'll see you at the next one. Good luck.